everybody? I'm Jerry, and today we have Week 14 biggest takeaways. We're going to go over the biggest positives, negatives, biggest losers, biggest winners of every game from Week 14. So I know you've probably already watched a lot of the games, but this is going to be a quick recap of every game and most important information about every game. You'll see in the thumbnail, you got Zappe, you got Flacco, you got Browning. You got to put some respect on their name. After this week, I think Zappe might be a little bit early. But, after what Joe Flacco's done, he showed that, he can still be a good quarterback, which for me is great to see. I love seeing an old guy just show back up and absolutely sling it. So that's a fucking blast. So stay tuned. We're going to talk about the Browns and Joe Flacco a little bit later. Same thing with Jake Browning, a young guy in an offense where you go, Joe Burrow's a star quarterback that's doing everything. And people say for some other teams, if a backup comes in, they're going to struggle because of the people around them, might not be very good. But in Jake Browning's case, you have to at least pose the question is Joe Burrow as good as everybody says? Or is Jake Browning also good? You kind of have to ask that question. So let's get right into the video. Starting off, we had Thursday night. It was Patriots-Steelers. Zip on the ball, Zappe. We got to talk about it. I think this is a huge game for him because he never really got a fair chance. I still don't really like how the Patriots are doing, and you can see Bill's job saved. I don't know if that's true because there was reports, if you've been paying attention, that Bill Belichick's job was actually done after the loss to the Colts in Germany, and they had already passed on him and want to move on moving forward. And getting a slight win over the Steelers with Mitch Trubisky at quarterback isn't necessarily something great to add to your resume if you're trying to prevent from getting fired. And it was check down city for Bailey Zappe. He did have some nice passes, and he throws some he's still a good quarterback, but I think fairly highly of Tyson Bagent being the Bears backup. I kind of think of Zappe as that. He could be a good backup that if you need to win a game because your starting quarterback is out, I think he could come in and win the game for you. I don't think he can be a franchise quarterback, though, and that's kind of the opinion that I have come to on Bagent. Wish I could have seen more. I think on a team, that's struggling at quarterback, like the Patriots or the Falcons, you could probably see Bagent go in and make some plays. But same thing for Zappe. I don't want to go too far onto that. He's been playing well. He's been making plays, and it's been worthy of talking about. Bill's job saved is tough to talk about just because they did beat the Steelers, but it's with the backup in, and I don't know if this really counts. And it was check down city. I had to put that in there. It was a lot of passes to Zeke. I believe Zeke led in either targets or receptions. It was one of the two. It was just Zappe doesn't see anything. Let me throw it to Zeke, and he'll do something with his legs. And it worked out very well for them, and I think that even could be sustainable if Zappe is able to read the field properly and doesn't see what's open, check it down to Zeke. That's a fair play. But the Steelers need a quarterback. I think it's clear Kenny Pickett isn't going to be it. It's tough to say that so soon, but we have seen almost 2 seasons, and you haven't seen any crazy increase in talent or you have to progress. You have to move forward. You have to develop as a quarterback, and I don't really see that out of Pickett. I haven't seen very many improvements. Everybody talked about his preseason, how he was so good in preseason, and he just hasn't really lived up to that. So I think the Steelers is a crazy take maybe, but I think they could miss the playoffs, and if they don't miss the playoffs, I don't think they're going to win a game. We'll talk a little bit later. Keep in mind, it was kind of an important game because of a fun fact that I have later, so stay tuned for that. Let's move on from the Patriots-Steelers. Patriots win 21-18. I was incorrect about that. Buccaneers-Falcons. Rachaad White had 27 touches, 25 carries, two receptions on 2 targets. Baker threw 29 passes, so Rachaad White was doing a lot of the offense, which I've talked about how Rachaad White in the running game hasn't really been very effective, and that seems to be fine because out of the backfield, he makes so many plays, and in this game, he just ran the ball pretty good and caught a couple passes that were pretty important, got decent amount of yards, So Rashad White in this game was half of the offense, and they beat the Falcons. Not that the Falcons are some amazing team, but they needed to beat this team. This is very important for divisional wins. The division's all tied up with a bunch of teams at 6-7. It's the Saints, Buccaneers, and Falcons are all at 6-7. So tiebreakers are very important. I also put where's Mike Evans, because Mike Evans did not do anything. And I knew that especially because he's on my fantasy team. He needs to be getting more touches. I don't think the Falcons were scheming anything up specifically to lock down Mike Evans. I did see some very inaccurate passes. And you could see, if you watch the game, the look on Mike Evans' face was not happy with how inaccurate some of the passes were and some poor choices. He was open a couple times and didn't get the ball. So we need to see Baker Mayfield just targeting Mike Evans more, because he is for almost 10 years now, has been a sure going to catch the ball or going to make a big play. We need to get Mike Evans the ball more. I put as the defense falling off for the Falcons because I don't think the Buccaneers offense is very good, and the defense has been kind of one of the strong points where, like, if the running game does well enough, Ritter doesn't turn the ball over too much, and the defense plays well, they win the game. And I think this is the same case. If the defense plays well, they win this game. They scored 25 points, but because the Buccaneers only scored, or I say only, because the Buccaneers scored 29, 25 points for the Falcons typically is a win with how their defense was playing early on in the season. But their run game struggled too. Bijan did not do well. Algier seems like he can get 3 yards every time he gets the ball, but he's never going to get like a 50-yard carry. He is just a bowling ball. Whenever he gets the ball, he's going to fall forward. He's going to get a few extra yards. He's never going to have that breakaway run, but that's what you have Bijan and Flash for. Last thing was Ritter to London. Ritter had a great game passing, mistakes as he always is going to make, and not enough to win. But I think if the defense plays a little bit better, they win the game. I don't think Ritter necessarily was the reason they lost. I think their defense was the reason that they lost. But it was very down to the wire. Final play, you have Drake London, 5 yards out of the end zone. He catches the Hail Mary pass. He just can't get into the end zone because he kind of dove to catch the ball. So I think it was 10 receptions for 172 or 171 yards. It was a great day for Drake London. And I'm hoping that Desmond Ritter built confidence in him to make plays moving forward. Regardless, Buccaneers win 29-25. Next, we have another person from the thumbnail, Jake Browning. Jake Browning, we'll skip right over to it. Jake Browning is the real deal. He is, I would say, more than a backup. Like, let's look at teams like if you're the Falcons. We just talked about the Falcons. If you're the Falcons and Jake Browning isn't available next year, do you go, maybe we want him? I think the Bengals will probably want to keep him, though, especially with Joe Burrow having the injury issues. Having a guy like Jake Browning that can fill in and just make plays and throw the ball very accurately, it's fun to see. And if you watch my power rankings videos, which I recommend because I think my power rankings are very accurate, I shot the Bengals way down. Like, Joe Burrow's out there screwed. Jake Browning will do all right. He might make a couple wins. But to blow out the Colts, who were, 7-5? Like, the Bengals played a great football game. So had to factor that in. The defense had the Colts number too. Jonathan Taylor being out doesn't help. But I think they kind of capitalized on Gardner Minshew's strengths and weaknesses. They knew that very well and were able to take care of it in the game. I thought the Colts looked different just because you don't have Jonathan Taylor. You just have Zach Moss, who, when filling in for Jonathan Taylor, played very well. But whatever it was, it just didn't work out. And I'd say the defense is a liability because Gardner Minshew has been able to produce offense, get the ball to Michael Pittman, Alec Pierce a couple times, Josh Downs more often than not. Mo Alley Cox had a nice touchdown, which was crazy to see, crazy to talk about. This late in his career, but cool to see. But Colts are going to need to play better on offense and, more importantly, play better on defense because you can't let Jake Browning just dot you up like that. He was having a phenomenal game. Minshew had a fumble early. That wasn't great either. Matt Gay couldn't figure out how to make a field goal, which definitely hurt my fantasy team. But yeah, Jake Browning was injured. He did get cramps during the game. That was the injury. AJ McCarron came in for like a drive. Jake Browning comes back and just keeps slinging it. So Bengals murder the Colts 34-14. I was very wrong about that. I thought they'd cover the spread in this particular game. But Lions Bears, Jared Goofball showed up again. The defense, we just moved on to the Jaguars Browns. We'll talk about that in a minute and Joe Flacco. But we got to talk about the Bears. The Lions have just been on a slow decline. So I don't know if you remember, but last year at the end of the year, I believe they went 6-1 or 5-1. It was the last 6 or 7 games. They only had one loss, and they were looking great. They're looking like the opposite now. They did beat the Bears in a crazy, last 4 minutes of the game. They come back, get 2 scores, and win. But this week, the Bears just kind of dominated them. It wasn't really ever super close. Bears took the lead early and never really gave it back. The defense it sucks. I mean, you have Aiden Hutchinson as your only pass rusher. I think their DBs are okay. You're missing Brian Branch, who I think is a big person to miss, not a physically big, but big human being to miss on the team. He's been playing well this year. And the penalties, the costly penalties, they had so many penalties. And it did look like watching the game, the refs, it seemed like they were calling more penalties on the Lions, which I'll take because I feel like the Bears always get screwed. And there definitely was the few plays that there are every game where Justin Fields slides and gets clocked in the head, and they just don't seem to care about that. But, the goofball and the Lions, they're going to need to pick it up because it seems like they're kind of locked down for the division with the Vikings not knowing what they're doing at quarterback, the Packers being able to beat good teams and still lose to bad teams, look like the Chicago Bulls this year, and then the Lions just falling off. I don't know what's going to happen. I think the Lions will win. I don't think the Bears will be able to do enough to take over the division. I think it's already over in that regard. I think even if the Lions lose out, they would still beat the Bears, especially with tiebreakers. So regardless of that, Bears just dominated the whole game. Their defense has been playing like a top 5 defense these past 4 or 5 weeks. Once Montez Sweat came in and Matt Eberflus got to have a significant time with the defense to be in control with Alan Williams kind of getting let go, the defense has been playing a lot better. And the offense has always been pretty good. The play calling has always been very suspect from Luke Getsy, but Fields still has the same issues. I need to comment on that because he's still holding on to the ball too long. He still can't get through his reads. In this particular game, although his stats are good and they get a 2-score win over the Lions, he did have a lot of inaccurate passes. He overthrew a bunch of guys throughout the game if you watched it. And a lot of the timing on throws was not good. There was 2 drops by Darnell Mooney, who, yes, he technically touched the ball and should have caught it, but he also was getting pressured and hit by a DB because the ball wasn't thrown on time. So Fields really needs, if Fields just works on paying attention to reads, read progressions, and throwing the ball on time, and throwing the ball, not holding on to it too long, he would seemingly be a perfect quarterback. On 4th and 13, they get a free play and he has a perfect bomb right in a bucket to DJ Moore. So a lot going on there. The defense, so we talked about it. It's been top tier. The Bears win 28-13. It was a great game for the Bears, and we'll see what happens with them moving forward. Let's go back. Not much to talk about the Browns here. That's why I only put the 2 points, but I think the game plan for the Jaguars was bad. They didn't run the ball enough. Travis Etienne's been doing well. I talk about this seemingly every week with the Bengals when they lose. It's like you didn't give the ball to Joe Mixon barely more than 10 times. And he's a weapon. You need to give him the ball. Trevor Lawrence had 3 interceptions. And the defense got mutilated. Didn't put the word in there. Don't know why I missed out on that. But the defense got mutilated. That's what I was looking for. I was just leaving it up to a surprise for you. But, the defense did not play good. Jaguars, their defense had kind of been a strong point, where like their offense has just kind of played well enough to beat the other team, and their defense really played well. In this game, the Browns was pretty much without Myles Garrett. You know, he wasn't healthy. I believe he still got some snaps, but he only got I think he only got one tackle. Like, he didn't really do very much in this game. Clearly not healthy yet. But Flacco was the hero. Jerome Ford's running the ball well. Flacco's dishing out Elijah Moore, Amari Cooper, whoever you want. They're playing good football. David Njoku is just taking over as at the tight end spot. If you have him on your fantasy team, I hope you're happy because he is killing it and very reliable. And Flacco looks like a young Joe Flacco, and they beat the Jaguars, who in my power rankings I've had in my top 10. You can check out the power rankings coming up tomorrow if you agree. But Browns have been playing great football. They beat the Jaguars 31-27. I did anticipate on them winning, so we get a pick right here. This is important. We got to talk about the Texans versus the Jets. I don't want you to overreact. We'll talk about the Jets first. Zach Wilson was cooking, though. He was going off. He was making good throws, scrambling when he needed to. And I put the defense as top tier. The defense held the Texans, who had been putting up points week in and week out, to only 6. I think a big part of that, let's talk about the Texans. Stroud needs his wide receivers. He was without Tank Dell and Nico Collins. I've had multiple conversations with my friends and with people on social media that talk football, and everybody's saying, look at what Stroud's doing. Like, he's got a pretty good offensive line, but all these receivers, nobody talked about Nico Collins last year, blah, blah, blah. I picked up Nico Collins in my fantasy team last year, and I drafted him this year in the 15th round because I believed in Nico Collins, and I actually thought he was a good receiver. And turns out to be a great pick for one of the last rounds in fantasy. And I think he is a good receiver. And this game shows Tank Dell goes down. What happens? Nico Collins gets like 10 or 11 receptions for 190 yards. Nico Collins goes down. They can't produce offense. So the Jets do have a very good defense. But especially when Noah Brown is the number 1 wide receiver, you have a big problem. Stroud goes down. Davis Mills doesn't really do much of anything. He's very clearly going to be a generational backup, if even a generational, probably just a backup if he makes a roster. And then the defense didn't come to play. DeMeco Ryans' defense had played well all season, you know, couple hiccups, couple slips, you know, against the Panthers, you know, losing to them being the Panthers' 1 win, which is still wild for me to think of. But Robert Saleh's defense, they have good DBs, and their run defense has been pretty good. You have C.J. Mosley getting in there. You get a strong defensive line. So Jets end up murdering the Texans. I think it is strongly because of the lack of offense. Stroud kind of ran into the Patrick Mahomes problems where you got receivers but can't really get open well, can't really hang on to the ball too well. You got drops. C.J. Stroud does still he is still the leader for inaccurate passes this year. So got to keep that in mind. I think the receivers are doing more than people are giving them credit. People are talking about Stroud as MVP. I think this game shows not quite worthy of giving him MVP yet. Rookie of the year, I'm totally for. But MVP is a little too much for me. Jets win 30-6 in this game. Rams-Ravens. I really thought the Rams were going to win this game. That's why I put watch out. I've been saying it week in and week out. Even when the Rams were losing, I was like, the Rams are still a good football team. I think Matt Stafford having Cooper Kupp was absolutely huge in the prior years. And him just being able, throw him the ball. He'll catch it. He'll get some extra yards. He'll make some crazy catch or whatever it needs to be. Now you have Puka Nacua. The guy can do the same thing. If Cooper Kupp ever gets into sort of like Adam Thielen age where he's kind of old and he's not able to do it as well anymore, Puka Nacua is going to be there to take over. And as long as you have a quarterback that can kind of do what Matt Stafford's been doing, or if Matt Stafford can keep doing it, 5 or 6 more years moving forward, it's possible. I don't think it is with his injuries and his pain. He probably isn't done yet, but the dude loves to play football. So I could see it happening. Just have to watch out. We talked about how Stafford was on fire. They just couldn't finish the game. They force overtime. The defense couldn't play well enough in the end. There was a lot of drops. Let's talk about the Ravens. Zay Flowers had 2 really big drops that they completely changed the game, where the Ravens could have easily won this game. There's no overtime, and the wide receiver drops. Again, we talk about similar problem to Mahomes, becomes an issue. Um, Odell Beckham Jr. isn't the same. OBJ is not the same as what he was, and he's not toast or anything, but he's just not the same as what he was. Zay Flowers has been a great receiver. He's still a rookie. He's going to make mistakes. I think we all understand that. Lamar is a good passer, though. His passes, a lot of them were very much so on target and just either incomplete. There's a little bit of a decision-making issue there, but the talent on his legs, too, the ability to, breach out of the pocket, scramble around, make plays. I think Justin Fields is actually still a little bit better than him at that. I think he's also a rookie and probably, or not a rookie, but he's a younger guy. Probably needs to do that a bit more. I think Lamar is a little bit more of a veteran where, he's a little bit more focused on throwing the ball, saving his body. But Lamar is still very good at that. And the defense needed to step up. They just let Matt Stafford cook. They let the Rams just kind of stayed on fire all game. And luckily the offense did enough, despite the drops and despite the problems, to stay ahead. With the Ravens winning the game 37-31. I did have the Rams covering, and it was a 7.5 point spread. Look at the crybaby, and takeaways. What happened there? Didn't know I typed takeaways twice. That's funny. We'll just use it as a joke. This whole screen's a joke. Bills defense played strong. Josh Allen had his ups and downs as usual, with interceptions. Mistakes, bad throws. It happens, but he also makes big plays, throws. Mahomes crying about it's a good call. It was a good call for the, I can't believe I typed takeaways twice. That's all that is I typed takeaways twice. I don't know how that happened, but let's quickly talk about Sean McDermott's job. People were talking about his job, like he might be on the line for being fired. You have Ken Dorsey get fired midseason. He made that decision. Now, with how everything's going, you had Sean McDermott maybe being fired. Well, getting this win might have saved his job, even though they didn't really win the game. Like if this offsides penalty that we later saw, Kadarius Toney having 4 or 5 times in this game where he was lined up offsides, refs never gave him a warning, which they typically would do. You could make that argument. I don't think you can get angry as Mahomes did, and I think he's a crybaby for what happened. And I am perfectly fine with seeing Mahomes be all disappointed and upset because of a ref call, because they normally go his way, but cry about it, Mahomes. McDermott, I think he saved his job, but the crazy part is if Kadarius Toney moves back 3 inches, the Chiefs win this game, and Ken Dorsey's long gone. Sean McDermott could have been fired, and this could be a big thing. So I think it's kind of crazy. It's good for him that he's going to stay in it, but I think the Bills are going to have to make a resurgence and do a lot better moving forward to stay in this. So the takeaways of the Bills-Chiefs game are Patrick Mahomes is a crybaby. We have to highlight that. And the slamming the helmet and all the mess, not great. Cowboys-Eagles. Defense is the real deal for the Cowboys. I'm just going to move right on to that. With how dominant the Eagles' offense has been and how bad their defense has been, for the Cowboys to shut down the Eagles and just not allow much of anything was huge. I put Dak probably might win MVP. I think he should. At this point, I hate to say it because I've mentioned in previous videos, I'm kind of closer to the Stephen A. Smith side where, they're going to fold and they're going to have a problem. I don't see how that happens at this point. I think it is very important for a team to be hot going into the playoffs. I think the other thing that we've seen is the Cowboys haven't been able to come from behind and win a game. So if a team gets up on them, I'm interested to see how that is going to be moving forward. But the Eagles defense has just been a liability. They're bottom probably 12 in the league as far as their defensive performance. Their scheme was not good against the Cowboys. The Cowboys are able to get pressure. They're able to force turnovers. And they were trying to let Hurts get out of the pocket and just make big plays. But Gilmore was playing well enough. And Deron Bland, I think, might have spooked Hurts with all of his pick sixes. Hurts was having some problems. And I put it's a scary future for the Eagles because Next week, the Eagles play the Seahawks. I think that'll be a close game where the Eagles win the game still. But then you have the Giants, the Cardinals, and then the Giants. That's really not great talent moving forward. So they're not playing a playoff caliber or even like a top 20 caliber team for, especially if they get the bye, which they would be more likely to because they're likely winning those games. If they get the bye too, they're going to have 4 weeks where they don't play a real even top half, top 20 football team. So that's going to be really interesting. I think I put who is the NFC favorite for the Cowboys. I think the Chiefs the Chiefs are clearly in the AFC. I think the 49ers are, but I think the Cowboys are right behind them. And I would put the Cowboys above the Eagles at this point, winning 33-13. How can you not? We'll see what happens moving forward with the Eagles. They need to win against the Seahawks, especially because the Seahawks haven't been amazing, but they've been a pretty good team. Not as of recently, but early on in the season. The Eagles have to beat them. If they don't, they're going to be in a big problem. Let's talk about the passing paisano. Tommy DeVito, let's go. I mean, him just making plays, his stats didn't look amazing. He was running out there like Michael Vick, though. We love to see that. There's something about him that excites me, and the fact that the Tommy DeVito story is kind of pushing the Mahomes and Travis Kelce and Taylor Swift story out makes me very happy. So as long as we can keep doing that, I'm cool about it. I think the Packers played down to their opponent. I think they're like, oh, the Jets, we'll win this game, no problem. And that was part of the reason that they lost. Giants drive down the field and get a game-winning field goal, which was huge. But A.J. Dillon, he was playing so well. He was getting good runs. He's not normally great. Normally Aaron Jones is the guy that you need. And A.J. Dillon's playing well, and they just stopped giving him the ball. And, you got some injuries at receiver for the Packers, so I don't know what the plan was there, but they blew it. They let the Giants drive down the field enough to score at the end. And then the Giants, the defense showed up when they needed to. The Packers, they played fairly well. Jordan Love showed that he's still going to make mistakes. And I think it's just going to be the inevitable at this point that he's going to make some mistakes, and that's what's going to happen. But the defense showed up when they needed to. I put Daniel Jones trade because Tommy DeVito is 3-0 in the past 3 games. He's winning. And it's crazy to talk about, but for some reason, the offense, I don't know if it's the confidence. The Boo Birds were talking when Daniel Jones was on the field, but when Tommy DeVito's out there, everybody's just excited and having a great game, and I love to see it, so I hope he's a part of it. But you have to talk about in the offseason, are you going to trade Daniel Jones? Is there anybody that's going to want to take his overpaid contract that he has right now? I have no idea. But Giants end up winning 24-22. We have to talk about it. Player of the week. I'm Jerry. Player of the week. Deebo Samuel. I went back and forth on who to pick for this. I had to pick Deebo Samuel. 7 receptions, 150 total yards, 2 total touchdowns. I had Brock Purdy in prior weeks, and Deebo Samuel is a big reason as to why Brock Purdy will get the award. Wanted to give it to Tommy DeVito. I don't think his stats really led up to it. I don't think a win over the Packers, who have been kind of on and off this year, was worthy of it, but I really wanted to give it to Tommy DeVito just to put him on the screen. Let's be real, deserves to be on screens everywhere. But I'm Jerry. Player of the week is Deebo Samuel. Had to give it to him. He's worthy of it for me. He played great this week. The rushing touchdown, it was just a quick 1 yard, but you had, on the receiving end, which was bigger. Normally, Ayuk has been the biggest receiver, and Deebo's just kind of been that gadget player. You have Deebo is the wide receiver that can play running back. McCaffrey's the running back that can play wide receiver. They kind of have that thing going on, but Deebo Samuel played great this week and was a big part of this big win over the Seahawks. Had to give it to Deebo. Was worthy to me. Let's go over the NFL leaders this week and the NFL fun facts. We have, we'll just go quickly. Brock Purdy, 368 passing yards is huge. A lot attributed to Ayuk and who we just talked about, Deebo Samuel. Jake Browning with the highest passer rating and a huge win. And not the most yards, but he was up there. We love to see what Jake Browning's been doing. Notable, we have Christian McCaffrey, 145 rushing yards on 16 carries, 9.1 a carry. Huge for him. No touchdowns this week, though. Been a common thing every week he's been scoring touchdowns. And this is only the second week this year that he hasn't scored a touchdown. Evan Ingram, a tight end, getting most receptions for Trevor Lawrence, who threw the ball a lot at 50 times. Not really many other people even close to that. Low 40s was the next most. And then the craziest one, in my opinion, we have a fun fact about it too. Jaquan Brisker, the Bears sophomore safety, gets 17 total tackles, 14 solo. And it wasn't because the Bears linebackers weren't playing well. He was just making plays. So I love to see that. Max Crosby ends up with sacks and TFLs. The Jets hold the Texans to 135 yards. That is a real stat. The Jets held the Texans to 135 yards. That was notable. That has to be on there. Brandon Aubrey for the Cowboys, their rookie kicker who used to play soccer, is the first player in NFL history to make 259-plus yard field goals in a game. Could have made them both from 62. 60 also. Would have been cool to note. We talked about it at the beginning of the video. Bill Belichick and Mike Tomlin with the Patriots and Steelers. Bill Belichick has won 2 Super Bowls since Mike Tomlin last won a playoff game, which is something to say about Mike Tomlin. I've heard talks about, are the Steelers done with Mike Tomlin? So had to throw that in there. Justin Fields has 146 passer rating through the whole season when targeting DJ Moore. Highest in the league. That's crazy. And then Jaquan Brisker is the first Chicago DB to record 17 tackles since 1960. Yes, that is 63 years ago. So good on Jaquan Brisker for doing that as a sophomore safety. But that has been the video. Thank you for watching. Went a little longer than I wanted to. We did get a little bit more in-depth about all the games we talk about. These videos end up being 30 minutes. So thank you for watching. Like, comment, subscribe, and have a great day.